What's happening, guys, and Merry Christmas. Welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On this week's show, we're finally going to get around to giving you all of those must-knows for the Dynasty Rebuilder. I am your host. I am Memphis. You can follow me on Twitter at DWZMemphis, and this is going to be a rare solo podcast. I am going to steal a page out of the Podfather's playbook, and I am going to do a top 10 takeaways style edition of things that rebuilders need to know. No Jerry this week. Going to be tough to line up schedules with the holiday. He's working. I've got stuff going on, but still wanted to make sure that we got a show out for you guys. I know it's the holiday week. I know a lot of you guys will be traveling to and from, might want an extra podcast. I know a lot of other shows will take the week off and enjoy the holiday, which I will do. Rest assured, I will have a good holiday trip with my wife and son. But for right now, I'm going to get out a podcast. And man, what an interesting time of the year. So we're coming out of week 16. The semifinals used to be the final week of the NFL season, and like you'd be going into Christmas and like it would be pretty much done. Now we get to carry over into week 17 with the playoffs. Me personally, I've got a couple of leagues I still made it. What a week for Josh Allen not to show up. It was an incredibly tough week for your boy. I think I was in 5 or 6 semifinals, and I think I crept into 2 finals. In one league, I was 13-1, and the only team to beat me during the regular season took me out again in week 16. That was a Josh Allen team, Cooper Kupp. My running backs did great in that particular league, but that's fantasy football. But as I told Jerry last week, as a dynasty gamer and a dynasty fan, that's my preferred method of fantasy football. The best time of the year is right around the corner, but a lot of you guys may not have been in the playoffs, and that's why you're tuning in, and you're looking for some tips as to how to get your roster better going into 2025. I have those for you, but I have a quick word from our buddy, the Podfather, about Dynasty Deluxe.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help strategize where you should take players because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our Dynasty guide, the Dynasty Dominator, would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
It is a great deal, and I will take a minute to remind you that you can get the all-in package for the rest of the 2024 season for $25. So you won't have it for a long time, but you can have it for a good time if you get that with promo code Santa. Again, that's the all-in package, which should give you access to all the Dynasty tools and rankings. It would only be for a short amount of time, but if you maximize your time, you can get a lot out of it in a little bit of time with Dynasty Deluxe, or if you use promo code Santa, you can get the all-in package for $25 and really prepare yourself for the off season. And that's what we're getting ready to do. There you go. There's my transition right into today's show topic. Do not have a good people, bad tweets. Didn't see a lot, went to all the usual offenders, leaned on the best resource in the bad tweets industry and fantasy receipts. Didn't really see anything that was eye-popping or worthy of scrutiny here the week of Christmas. So we're going to give good people bad tweets the week off. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're the audio listener and you didn't hear the very special Christmas open that I made for this particular show, I highly recommend you go to the audio version. You go to Player Profiler, or you can go to our channel, the Dynasty WarZone, and you can record. You can listen to the special open for this week's Christmas edition. And I'm going to go through these. I'm getting ready to start 1 through 10, but this just reminds me that every Monday throughout the season, when Matt, aka the Podfather, does this, it is extremely hard to do a one-man show, and it's very hard to do a one-man show well. There's no one to interact off of. There's just you and your show sheet. And I think that's part of what makes the Podfather so special. So in his honor, I am going to do my best with this, but I'm going to give you 10 tips, like not like Podfather where he says it's the top 10 takeaway and he gives you like 35 takeaways. It's going to be a true top 10, or maybe not top 10, but just 10 things that I recommend that you can do and how to get these rosters turned around. So we'll start with tip number 1 is evaluate your roster. And this is number 1 for a reason. I think that in anything in life, you have to evaluate over a period of time. In the NFL, it's a season. At work, it's annual review time. Whatever that is, you need to evaluate what's going on. And I was taught this a long time ago in business. And, if you can ask these questions, what do we do right? What do we do wrong? And what are we going to do differently next time? And I think your dynasty roster is no different. It's what do we do right this year? What do we do wrong? And what are we not going to do, or what are we going to do differently next year? Maybe you bombed the rookie draft. Maybe you reached a ton. Maybe you invested heavily in older players trying to make one last title run. Could have been a lot of things, but the first thing you have to do is for every one of your dynasty rosters is go in and give it an honest performance review. Just like you would if you at your job, unless you work for yourself, and you should still do this. But if you work for a company, probably between March and June, you probably get an annual performance review. They lay out everything I said, what'd you do right, what'd you do wrong, things to work on in the next year, and boom, there you go. Do the exact same thing with your dynasty roster. You need to look at it and go, okay, these are my building blocks. Okay, these are pieces that I need to get rid of. Just make a list. Here's what I'm keeping. Here's what I'm trading. Here's what I'm looking to do. And identify your cornerstone players. And cornerstone players for me personally, cornerstone players in a 1 QB are your wide receivers. And in a super flex is your QB position. And I say this because you can simply go look at the top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now. And it's like looking at, the stock market exchange. It's like there's Amazon, there's Google, there's Netflix, whatever. You get all of these premium brands at the top. Quarterback is no different. Number 1 right now, Lamar Jackson. Number 2, Josh Allen. Number 3, Joe Burrow. Number 4, rookie surprise, Jaden Daniels. And number 5, Jalen Hurts. Again, premium, 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 premium. There's an old saying in finance. You don't go broke, you don't get fired buying IBM. And it's an older saying, IBM, Microsoft, whatever you want to call it, is solid. It's always going to perform. You're not going to crush it. You're not going to 10x your investment, but you're always going to be steady. That's what we're doing with guys like Lamar, Allen, Burrow, Hurts. I will say, we mentioned this way earlier before anyone else on the show, that from a dynasty perspective, is it time to deal a guy like Patrick Mahomes? We'll get into that more in the offseason. And on a 1 QB league, it's all about wide receivers. And it's even more prominent with the wide receivers. Coming into this season, any ranking show that you heard, there was, in some order, there was some order of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and CeeDee Lamb. Those are currently your wide receivers 1 through 4. And again, blue chip, positive ROI. They always put points back in your roster. And this is why you want to build around these guys. As if you're a true rebuilder, like you have like next to nothing, then it makes it more difficult because you don't have a lot to go get one of these pieces. Hopefully you have one, or you can take a couple of some pieces and maybe trade up. But even if you can't afford one of these premium pieces, how do you get as close to this list as possible? I wasn't a huge Drake London fan coming into the season. He's having a great top 10 wide receiver season. Maybe you can't afford Jamar Chase. Can you afford Drake London? Can you afford a guy like Garrett Wilson? Again, having a top 10 wide receiver season. And maybe they can take that big jump. I think they need quarterback upgrades. Maybe Michael Penix Jr. will be that for Drake London, but that's where you're looking. You may not be able to get one of these top four, but you want to build around a top wide receiver. And maybe it's a rookie. And that's going to take me to point number two. Point number two is don't overreact to excellent rookie seasons. We saw it way early in the season after that historic 3 or so week run of Malik Neighbors. There were several of my peers, including, like Jax Falcone, that were ready to anoint him wide receiver 2, or in some cases wide receiver 3. It's like, well, we'll slow down a second. I like Malik Neighbors. I like Malik Neighbors a bunch. He was my wide receiver 1 in this class. I had him ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. But I think you have to be really careful about slingshotting these guys to the tippy top. Brian Thomas Jr., a guy that I personally was not super high on coming into this season, but fair to say he's the wide receiver 2 in this class right now. I think if you were to re-rank this class right now, it'd be Neighbors 1, Thomas 2, probably Marvin Harrison 3, and Roma Dunze 4. But we don't want to go out and get crazy and instantly, vault this guy, Brian Thomas Jr., being that guy, as the, wide receiver 8 in a startup or something crazy. Maybe 8's fair, 10, 12. So somewhere in there, I don't know. I haven't done my off-season rankings or my first set of off-season rankings. I will do that. But then the other two guys I really want to talk about in this don't overreact to excellent rookie season categories are Jaden Daniels and Brock Bowers. First of all, I don't think you can go wrong with Brock Bowers. He's done this with literally as bad a quarterback play as a guy could have to set all-time rookie tight end records. Started off with Gardner Minshew, went to AOC, had some Desmond Ridder in there, and the guy just continues to produce. Currently, total points scored, non-tight end premium, but just points scored in 1 PPR. He's your tight end 1. The problem is, and rightfully so, is he's going to be the tight end 1 going into Dynasty startup season, which is why you can't go out and pay for that. You're looking for a guy who can give you similar-ish production without having to pay that price. You're a rebuilder. You can't put all your eggs in that basket of a Brock Bowers. People tried to do this last year with Sam Laporta. People tried to do this last year with Trey McBride, and Trey McBride, more than Sam Laporta, has rewarded you. But when you buy these guys at the tippy top, you can't buy them higher than the number 1 at their position. It's hard to get that long-term return on that investment unless they always play at that level. And as we've seen Sam Laporta, they don't always play at that level. It's tough to go back to back. So I like Brock Bowers. I think he'll do fine next year. He's probably going to get a QB upgrade. He's definitely going to get a QB upgrade because you can't do worse than the bums he's got. But going to be very tough. And then the last guy, the most cautionary tale of this, is Jaden Daniels. And I don't say this to bust on CJ Stroud, but we did this with CJ Stroud. And in 2018, we did this with Baker Mayfield. We see these guys come off of these tremendous rookie seasons, and we instantly want, and I think it's just that newness, that new complex, we got to move someone to the top. And it's going to be, people are going to be pushing, mark my words, Jaden Daniels will be the QB 2 or 3 for a lot of dynasty services in about 3 weeks. As soon as the fantasy season's over and people start calculating their dynasty rankings, you'll see a lot of Jaden Daniels QB 2, QB 3. I think it's a stretch. Could he be there? Where would I have him? I think like 5, 6 right now. I mean, personally, I'd still rather have Josh Allen. I'd still rather have Lamar. I think I'd still rather have Joe Burrow. And then I'd have to go back and look. Would I rather have Jade? I think the big question for like a lot of people is, would you rather have Jaden Daniels or Patrick Mahomes? Man, that's going to be one that we have to answer this offseason. But for point number 2, don't overreact to excellent rookie seasons. Just like I said, guys, it's a trap that you can't get out of as a rebuilder. If you go out and you literally take every last piece, your first, everything else, and you go give it to the Jaden Daniels GM, and then Jaden Daniels regresses the way CJ Stroud did, now you're even in a deeper hole. And I get that I just told you to build around quarterbacks, but be very, very careful overpaying for a 1-year sample size. But also, point number 3, you need to review the rookies that didn't break out in year 1. We'll call this the Jackson Smith and Jigba corollary. So guys, maybe they didn't have the best supporting cast around them. Maybe the coaching was bad. Maybe the situation was just bad. And they're rookies. Not everyone's going to hit year 1 right off the gate. For every Brian Thomas Jr., there's a Keon Coleman. And these are some of the guys I want to talk about. Guys that I'm looking at next year. The first one's going to be interesting because out of all the rookie quarterbacks, he's gotten the least amount of love. But Caleb Williams. I pushed back on Caleb Williams being quote-unquote generational. But he's been fine. I think he's got 3,300 passing yards right now. And I think with 2 games left to go, he has a shot to be in his rookie year, mind you, the Bears' all-time leading yards passed in a season quarterback, in spite of head coach getting fired, multiple offensive coordinator changes, and just playing in a super tough division. And I think he's going to be down. And this is a guy that, like, if you're in the middle of a rebuild in a super flex and you've got that 101, 102, I think this would be my target. I think Shedeur Sanders is going to be fine. If you didn't listen to last week's podcast about the mock draft that Jerry and I did, go back and listen. I will take Caleb Williams in spite of all of his flaws, struggles, and issues. I will take him right now over any quarterback in this coming up class. Anybody. There's not one in there that I would rather have than Caleb Williams. And I'll tell you, outside of Shedeur Sanders, there's not one in this class I'd rather have than J.J. McCarthy. Now, McCarthy didn't break out because of injury, and maybe we'll bring him up at a different point in the show. But if you've got the 102, because you can't give up the 101. If you have the 101 in this coming draft, regardless of format, that's Ashton Genty. That's going to net you a haul. So we'll talk about that, trading the 101. But I'm saying if you have the 102 or later and can go get Caleb Williams in a super flex, this is a guy to really be interested in. We'll talk about Ricky Pearsall. Had some moments. I don't necessarily blame this season on him because he did get shot. After all, they tried to steal his Rolex and put a bullet in him, but he survived and he's back on the football field. For me, this is a cap move. I think Debo is going to be let go in the offseason. Brandon Ayuk's going to be slow getting back from the knee. And I think you're going to see a lot of Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and George Kittle next year in San Francisco. I think Ayuk will eventually bounce back. They kind of need him to. They just gave him a huge chunk of money. But Ricky Pearsall is a guy. Keon Coleman has had some flashes. That's what you're hoping for. You're hoping for a big step forward in the offseason. Keon Coleman, I mean, Florida State's technically a Power 5 school and a big school, but I think there's been some growing pains for Keon Coleman. And the big one that I'm going to save the big one. I'm going to bounce the tight end real quick. I want to get you guys ahead of this guy. I want to get you ahead of Ben Sinnott. Now, you're going to probably be hearing this Christmas Eve or later. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, day after Christmas. And again, Merry Christmas, Happy Boxing Day, whatever, all those things, all of the things, whatever you're into. But you're only going to hear more of this as you get into January, February, March, etc. Ben Sinnott. My favorite rookie tight end from this class to stash is Theo Johnson, but I'm telling you right now, go stash Ben Sinnott. Tight end for the Commanders. I mean, outside of Terry McLaurin, we saw Crowder. Is it Jalen? Jaden? I don't know. Crowder, he had 2 touchdowns yesterday. Alameda Zacchaeus, 2 touchdowns yesterday. We just talked about how well Jaden Daniels playing and looked really good. You're going to hear a lot of, I don't want to call it lazy, but it's easy connect the dots fantasy analysis where you say, you know what? Ben Sinnott next Trey McBride. But it's very possible. It's very possible that Ben Sinnott takes a huge step in year 2 the same way Trey McBride did in year 2. Definitely a guy that you want to get before that social media drumbeat really drives the guy's price up. I'm on him now. And then my final guy, the most analogous to Jackson Smith and Jigba, is Rome Odunze. What was up with Jackson Smith and Jigba last year? Well, he came into the season with a little bit of injury issues. He had the wrist. But then he was being squeezed by a couple of veterans. He was being squeezed by DK Metcalf. He was being squeezed by Tyler Lockett. Well, Tyler Lockett likely to be gone next year. And we've already seen, even with Tyler Lockett there, we've seen JSN's emergence in this offense. Currently wide receiver 7 in PPR on the season right now. And I think that could be Rome Odunze. The Bears did extend DJ Moore, but Keenan Allen's a free agent. I don't think that that's someone they'll bring back. And I think a lot of those targets are going to wind up going the way of Rome Odunze. We mentioned earlier in the show Brian Thomas and about how his star has risen. I don't want to say Odunze's has fallen, but part of doing this podcast now is trying to get you ahead of the narrative that you're going to hear very quickly on social media. So if there was a guy I was looking to capitalize on very quickly, it would be Rome Odunze. So that was point number 3, review rookies or players who didn't break out in year 1. Number 4, identify rookies that overperformed and sell high. Now, I've only got a few because this rookie class, I'm not going to tell you to sell high on Brian Thomas. I think Brian Thomas is someone I'm keeping in my dynasty portfolio. I'm not telling you to trade Jaden Daniels. What would I want for Jaden Daniels? The earth and the sun. A guy that comes to mind is Bo Nix. I think he's the easiest to look at and say, wow, he's a top 10 QB. I don't know that he ever repeats that. That's where I tell you that would be incorrect. This was a tough one because you got to talk about, not overreacting and finding the players to buy low on. And then, you buy low, you sell high, stock trading, business, whatever, 101. I just don't think Bo Nix is ever going to repay you as a seller what his worth is going to be. I don't want to say the guy's going to be the next Jared Goff or Baker Mayfield or just the kind of guy who's just like solid week in, week out, but he's a QB1, and I don't think you have to pay QB1 prices. So you could potentially sell him. Maybe you could get another first, but in Superflex, you're not going to move a quarterback to go get a quarterback, especially in this rookie class when there's not a quarterback to get. Now, that being said, if you wanted to package Bo Nix along with some draft pick compensation or other players and try to move up to a Justin Herbert because you think he's going to get more weapons and you see that offense taking another step forward. Okay, I'll see that. I know Bo Nix for just the year of 2024 has outperformed Justin Herbert, but if that's a route you wanted to go, would totally support that. But just out and out selling Bo Nix, I don't think is a thing. And then I had two running backs in this category. One's Tyron Tracy, which again, what am I trying to get? If I'm a rebuilder, this is the perfect running back to hang on to. I've said this many times on the show. I think the Giants' skill position guys are very interesting. They need a quarterback and some help on the offensive line. And Tyron Tracy has a shot to have 1,000 yards rushing as a rookie behind a horrible offensive line with the combination of Daniel Jones, Tommy Cutlets, and Drew Lock at quarterback. He's still able to thrive. The Giants currently have the 101, the first pick overall, in line to draft Shedeur Sanders. That would be a quarterback upgrade. I don't know why, but again, same thing. If you wanted to package him and maybe a pick and go get you a wide receiver like a Garrett Wilson or a Drake London, okay, because you're trying to get that wide receiver to build around. I dig it. And then the same thing with Bucky Irving. I didn't think Bucky Irving would come in and usurp Rachaad White as fast as he did, but he did. He's the between the tackles bell cow grinder. In a perfect world, Bucky Irving and Rachaad White would be some kind of a Walmart version of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, but I don't think so. The thing with Bucky Irving that does make me nervous is that as quickly as they pivoted to him away from Rachaad White after a monster season in 23, will they do the same to Bucky? Same thing. Good year, really good for a rookie. But again, do you package him along with some other things and like get out of the Bucky Irving business and turn that running back into a wide receiver that you can build around and, turn a really good rookie, a really good performing rookie, and one that we believe in, and then turn him into a cornerstone. So you go from a good player, a solid player, a player you believe in, to a cornerstone with some trading skills. So that was number 4. Identify rookies that overperform and potentially sell high. Number 5, this is the easiest one going into a second break, is stockpile draft picks. But I will tell you, don't just stockpile draft picks in 2025. It's the short-sighted narrative. We do it every year. It's like, oh, wait, I can use these draft picks in like 5 months? You mean when May gets here, I can start making rookie selections? Okay, I'm in. I want to get 2025s. Depending on what you need in 2025, this may not be the class for you. If you need a wide receiver, I mean, there's some good ones in here. I mean, you look at the mock draft we did last week. Ted McMillan from Arizona, and Jerry thinks Travis Hunter is going to be a wide receiver. There's a few. But this is not like a wide receiver class like last year or even the year before. I don't want to say it's a down wide receiver class, but based on what I've seen to date, it's not down, but it's not as good as what we've seen the previous few draft classes. So if you need a wide receiver, maybe you trade your first or package your first for can you get a wide receiver that you like that's got some upside like a Khalil Shakur, and get that person's 2026 first. Seems reasonable. If you're on the clock and you don't like where you're at in the draft, trade back a full round, pick up a 26 second. When you hear me or anyone say stockpile draft picks, that's true. But I'd say for me, like if someone's out there trying to peddle me 2027 draft picks, I'm not as interested, to be honest. I mean, I'm not interested, but that's 2 years away. I mean, we could have World War III and this whole blue marble we live on could be blown to hell. So 25s, 26. So when I say stockpile picks, that's really what I mean. Same thing in Superflex. If you need a quarterback, this is not going to be a good quarterback class. If you can't get your hands on the 102, you're probably not going to get Shedeur Sanders. So if you're not going to get Shedeur Sanders, do you want to gamble on Quinn Ewers? No. Do you want to go trade a pick for like a JJ McCarthy? Might be worth it. Do you want to trade that pick for JJ McCarthy? Like maybe you got 104 and you don't love who's there. Can you go get JJ McCarthy and future draft picks for the 104? Today, maybe not. When the draft is going on, and if the Vikings were to extend Sam Darnold, maybe you could. But yeah, stockpile draft picks. It's just because it's simple and easy doesn't mean that it's not good for you. And that's going to transition me to our FastDraft commercial. So let's hear about FastDraft.
Oh, incredible news about FastDraft. FastDraft DFS is live. It's called the Flex 6 Frenzy. You just draft 6 guys, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends for the Sunday slate. You like Jahmyr Gibbs? You like Jackson Smith and Jigba? You like Tyrone Tracy? Draft him. And the beauty is you can just order 5 teams, submit your rankings, and FastDraft will email you the results. We awarded $1,000 in prizes our first week, and we're just going up from there. Soon there's going to be a select 6. No drafting at all. You just pick any 6 guys. Our DFS mantra, just say no to salaries on FastDraft. Don't forget there's free tools on FastDraft too. You want to get ready for startup season? We've created the best Dynasty mock draft experience there is. And if you want to play in these DFS contests, and our best ball contest for 2025 are coming very soon too, just use promo code PODFATHER when you deposit and you get a free draft. It's that easy. And you're like, oh, I already have FastDraft. Great. Refer a friend. Have them put your username in as the promo code, and then you and your friend will both get an instant deposit match up to $25. We got DFS. We got Dynasty Mocks. We got Best Ball. It's all there for you on FastDraft.app. Check it out. And the promo code is PODFATHER.
You heard him. And just because it's fast and fun doesn't mean it's not worth it. And you heard the two things. Mock drafts for Dynasty, which we all love, and best ball season. I know a lot of you best ball degens out there are ready for best ball season. Check out FastDraft, and you can use my promo code if you want, DWZ Memphis. It'll get me a free draft and, all of the things. But check that out. It's good stuff. All right, let's move away from rookies as a rebuilder, and let's move into some veterans. So point number 6 for me is review injured players who might regain value in the future. We talked about how desperate the quarterback rookie situation is. Guys that I'm looking at, Dak, Trevor Lawrence, and again, I've brought his name up a few times, J.J. McCarthy. I mean, Dak, when healthy, is a top 8 QB. And I don't think he's going to cost you top 8 at the position valuation to go and pick him up. Trevor Lawrence got off to a horrible start, but toward the last few weeks that he played, he was playing at a top 10 QB pace. And J.J. McCarthy in this is the mystery box. For me, he was a project coming out of Michigan, and I don't know what his situation could be. I really could see a world where he gets the Jordan Love, where he sits for 2 more years while the Vikings see what goes on with Sam Darnold. I mean, as a GM, I've said this before, be real hard to explain to your fan base, because if the Vikings beat Green Bay this coming week, week 17, if they beat Green Bay, and I'm pretty sure that's at home, and they beat Green Bay and Detroit wins next week, then week 18, the Vikings and Detroit could be playing not only for the NFC North, but the NFC North and the number 1 overall seed. Good luck explaining to your owner and fan base how you're letting that guy walk out the door. But again, J.J. McCarthy, super stash based on the no sample size. I feel almost dirty saying Jonathan Brooks. He's the only hurt running back that I'm really going to invest anything of merit into. Running backs, whether it's, Bucky Irving or, Rico Dowdle or a bunch of guys, you can always find some value at the running back position. I do think Jonathan Brooks is a special talent. I don't know where I'd have him in this class if he were perfectly healthy versus the guys of 2025, but it stinks. And he's the kind of guy that you can stash on the back end of your bench, and maybe you see flashes of him next year, but it's probably going to be 2026 before he gets out there. But that'll be okay. He'll still be like 24, and maybe he can have like a J.K. Dobbins-esque, season in the sun. Wide receivers, if you're a rebuilder that maybe isn't too far away, maybe you can look at like some of these wide receivers like Brandon Ayuk. I mentioned the situation in San Francisco earlier. He will be slow getting back, I believe. Multiple ligaments, if I remember correctly. He's probably going to be slow to start if he doesn't start the season on the pup. Chris Olave, a guy I had a ton of belief in coming into the season, because I do believe he's a talented guy. His name does carry some value, so he's going to be a little bit harder to acquire at a reasonable price. But just a guy that I still think the best football is ahead of him. I do think he's going to be stuck with Derek Carr again in 2025, as sad as that is to say. But super talented guy. And then this next guy, Rashee Rice, dominating targets in 2024 until he got hurt. He was dominating targets as a rookie in 2023. I think people are seeing the shiny thing there with Xavier Worthy. I've said this before. I do believe this is likely the last season we see Travis Kelce. What is he, like 35? Same age as like Gronk. And, he's got a girlfriend worth billions, and he's got plenty of money of his own. He could go do a podcast with his brother. So I think Rashee Rice will slide right back in 2025 as the dominant target hog in this offense. And then Chris Godwin, slated to be a free agent. Does he come back to Tampa Bay? I don't know. Only 29, but a guy that, again, when he can stay healthy, just a constant producer at the wide receiver position. And then some tight ends. Dallas Goedert, not playing right now. I threw him on here along with Evan Ingram and Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson, I mentioned earlier, as part of that young Giants nucleus that I like. And then Evan Ingram, I think if we're going to try to get the bounce back on T-Law, Evan Ingram, only 30 years old. I just mentioned how old Travis Kelce is. Might not be a bad candidate if you think next year you can contend. But he would be, out of everyone that I mentioned, Dak, Trevor Lawrence, Brooks, all the wide receivers, Ingram is the one to be the most trepidatious of, given his age and that you are rebuilding. Tip number 7, create your own buy low list. And I say your own because, you can only buy low if you think they're a buy low. You can't buy low if someone else tells you they're a buy low. Buy lows for me, Sam Darnold, Baker. Sam Darnold, I think if I remember correctly, he's like QB 7 or 8 right now on the season. And I know it's fun to give all their credit to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and Kevin O'Connell. But if you watch that final touchdown drive of the Vikings and Seattle game, Baker split 2 defenders and put that ball right where only Justin Jefferson could get it. Jefferson makes a great catch. And what's Sam Darnold got? 35 touchdowns? The guy's on fire right now. So and I think people hate him. I think his past is so checkered that you can still get him somewhat as a buy low. Same with Baker. I think he's the QB 6 on the season right now. There's this pocket of Baker and Darnold and Jared Goff. Those are the kind of and then I mentioned Knicks at 9. These are the kind of quarterbacks that sizzle, like the fancy Nancy, guys on Twitter. They just don't like because they're not super fancy and they overvalue other guys and want to slingshot them ahead of those solid point producers, especially Baker and Goff there. And then CJ Stroud, not having a tremendous season. The one thing I will bank on with CJ Stroud, who I think is currently QB 16, is I don't think he's going to spend the summer of 2025 doing a bunch of podcasts and traveling the world with Micah Parsons. I bet you he gets back in the lab, gets back under the hood, and gets working on his craft. And you could get a nice bounce back for CJ Stroud in 2025. Again, services had him as high as QB2 overall in a startup a year ago, and now you can get him considerably less than that. And he very well could bounce back. So CJ Stroud is a buy low. 2 running backs for you that I have on my personal buy low list is James Cook. Kind of like Sam Darnold or Baker. It's like no matter how good this guy performs, people just hate him. And, Josh, Josh, the running back for the Packers, I'm drawing a blank on his name. Just a solid QB1. Josh Jacobs. I'm sitting here. This is why it's hard to do a one-man show. Josh Jacobs, just for years and years and years, running back 7, running back 8, running back 10, solid. That's James Cook last year on the season, running back 10. This year on the season, running back 10. I get Ray Davis. I get all these other guys. He just performs. And he's more of a boom buster. Like he had a huge game yesterday and, he'll have some duds, but just a guy that is vastly underrated. So he's always going to be a buy low for me. Breece Hall is another guy. He was in that top 3 running backs at the position coming into the season from a startup perspective. Aaron Rodgers stayed healthy and he's not killed it. Part of it could have been overuse last year coming back from the ACL. The offense is just bad in general. We'll see what happens, but I think Breece Hall could be a nice offseason value. And then a guy that I really like, and I'm probably higher on than most, is Jaden Reed. Got off to a smoking hot start this year, has really cooled off of late. I think that evens out. And again, I'm always going to be a Jaden Reed stand. So I think he's always worth a buy. He's the kind of guy that if you have is like your wide receiver 3, he's going to give you a wide receiver 2 upside. But if you're in a rebuild, this is the kind of guy that has the potential to take another step. And then tight ends, it's like Sam Laporta. We're going to hear nothing but Bowers and McBride and, but this is a guy that could get a big bounce back. It'll be curious to see what happens with the Lions in the offseason. Does Ben Johnson take a head coaching job? Who's the new offensive coordinator? What emphasis does he put on the passing game? Does Sam Laporta retake his position as the second or third option in the passing game? I mean, we're talking about year two, a guy in year two who's like tight end 10 that people are pretty disappointed on. So tip number 7, create your own buy low candidates. Number 8, monitor player values. I'll give you a classic example here. Guy like Jonnu Smith. I don't know that he's going to get a huge bump in the offseason, but he's tight end 4 on the season. That is crazy to me to think that Jonnu Smith, who was pretty much left for dead in that same class with David Njoku and Evan Ingram, just came out of nowhere and just had a monster season. Miami's going to have a lot of cap questions to answer this offseason. They're paying Hill, they're paying Waddle, they're paying Tua. Their defense is bad. Do they let one of those other pass catchers go and really focus on Jonnu as a second target in this offense? And then you have to go out and find similar situations, which is going to take me to point number 9, monitor free agency and the draft and the impacts they have. So we know who the free agents are at key positions. This is point number 9, monitor free agency and the draft impact. If Sam Darnold doesn't get extended in Minnesota, then that creates a tremendous amount of impact on all the pass catching options. I'm sorry. We don't know that a rookie quarterback can feed Justin Jefferson the way that Sam Darnold has or the way Kirk Cousins did before that. Kirk Cousins is another guy. We know he's leaving Atlanta. People are super down on him. Daniel Jones, does he get a second opportunity? Or if you're a team in the NFL, do you want to invest a high draft pick in a guy like Quinn Ewers? Or do you want to try to think your head coach / offensive play caller can resurrect the career of Daniel Jones the way Kevin O'Connell did with Sam Darnold? I don't know. All of those guys are going to have a huge impact on teams around. And I do think Daniel Jones would be like a bridge guy in Las Vegas with the Raiders. Maybe he's no better than Gardner Minshew, but maybe the running back class. And it's going to be Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, and Javonte Williams. That's kind of the superstars. And I think Najee re-signs, and I think the rest of these teams will be in play in the draft. You heard it last week during the mock draft special, and you're going to hear it all off season. This is a very strong rookie running back class. More teams putting a larger emphasis on the run. And do these guys become jobless? Probably not. But are they ever going to be key contributors again? Also, probably not. So I think Najee, if you think Najee walks, then maybe you go get Jaylen Warren. Do you think Jerome Ford can hang on to that role in Cleveland? Do you think Jaleel McLaughlin is the guy who can assume that number 1 role when Javonte potentially leaves in free agency? Don't know, but this is how you use free agency to your advantage. You're almost playing future predictor by trying to figure out, hey, who's likely to stay, who's likely to go, who's likely to suffer, who's likely to benefit. Wide receivers, T. Higgins. I've mentioned T. Higgins before on the program. Bell of the ball. He is going to have his pick of teams in the offseason. The guy's going to get a huge bag and going to really impact the value of whatever quarterback he lands with. But also, we've talked about Jermaine Burton. It's going to open up potential opportunity for him. I'm going to tie to the tight end position. Mike Gesicki, also a free agent. Eric All, the rookie tight end they drafted. Do the Bengals let Gesicki walk and try to get something out of Eric All? I don't know, but that's how you can potentially leverage this. If you think Eric All's a stash, go get him. Go get him now, because when Gesicki signs with the whomever Chargers, I don't know, I'm making a team up that needs a tight end, then all of a sudden, every Dynasty Twitter head is going to be like, you need to go get Eric All. Well, by then it's too late. The news is out there. Stephon Diggs is going to sign somewhere. Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen has slowly began his descent down the DeAndre Hopkins value train. I think a veteran that like an NFL team will value more than we will in Dynasty. And then the last guy that I love, the second best wide receiver in the free agent class, Chris Godwin. But if Chris Godwin, happens to go to the Giants, I don't know. Again, I'm making teams up. What does that do to McMillan? What does that do for Cade Otton? What does that do for Mike Evans? You got to think, if he leaves, where does he go? And then also, which is harder to predict than if he leaves, who benefits, who gets hurt if Chris Godwin signs with the Giants? Well, I just made that up again, but that would obviously be Malik Neighbors. They're bringing him in, giving him a bunch of money. Going to make it a very interesting time wherever some of these guys land. So right now, you're trying to predict. Here's the questions. Are they going to leave? If the strong possibility is yes, then you start looking to see who benefits from that, knowing that someone may benefit in the short term, and then the draft comes around and can throw a monkey wrench in this. It's what makes it hard, but if you do the work, you can get ahead. Two other tight ends I threw on there, Zach Ertz and Tyler Conklin, are free agents. I think Ertz is just another reminder that Ben Sinnott is going to be prepared to take a huge step forward. Another guy that I could potentially see, this is not free agency, this is just popped in my head as I'm doing this because I'm alone, and that's what happens when I'm left alone. I think Kyle Pitts could get traded. I really, really do. The Falcons are going to have big cap questions coming up. They're going to release Kirk Cousins. It's going to create a ton of money in dead cap, and they're not going to be able to extend him. And obviously Kyle Pitts, as bad as he's played, still going to want paid. And I'm hoping Kyle Pitts can go out there and, get that Evan Ingram, change the scenery, big bounce back for the guy. All right, my last point number 10 for you guys rebuilding: identify teams that get a head coaching upgrade or offensive play caller upgrade. And it's really that simple. One of my bold takes, one of my hot takes, I actually had two really good ones. One was that Kirk Cousins would only be a year in Atlanta. Cha-ching. Number two was Bo Nix would be the QB1 overall of all the rookies in fantasy points. Jaden Daniels said, not so fast, my friend, but I was pretty damn close. Pretty damn close, because Bo Nix outperformed Caleb Williams. He'll outperform Drake May. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy, gets a pass because he didn't play a snap. But the reason why I was so high on Bo Nix was the situation. I saw what Sean Payton did with Drew Brees for, a decade plus. I saw what he did with Russell Wilson last year. In spite of all of Russell Wilson's shortcomings, he still finished at the time of his benching. He was a top 10 QB. So when you see a team, no matter how much you may or may not like that quarterback, or if a quarterback you like winds up in a really good team, and don't be afraid to downgrade a bad situation. Like, I love Sam Darnold. He might as well be family, the Ginger Jesus. But if he chases the bag this offseason and winds up in a spot like Las Vegas or, another crappy situation without the infrastructure of a team like the Vikings, I'm going to downgrade. It's going to be one of the big things I focus on this year for rookie season and free agent season is fit and what do they look like in this offense. All right, guys, there you go. There are top 10 or the 10 things that I wanted you to be able to take away for your Dynasty rebuilding rosters. Not too bad, right? Solo show for your boy here. No Jerry. Jerry's out working and preparing for the holidays with Mrs. Jerry. And if you're watching live on YouTube, you'll notice the black eye. You'll notice the black eye your boy Memphis has got just in time for family pictures. My wife and mom loved it. Always feels weird trying to explain to the family how you got a black eye at my age. And it's like, that's jujitsu. Yep. Guy healed me in the face. The heel of his foot right below my eye. Yep. Left a mark, but that's all right. I soldier on, but there you go. I soldiered on through a black eye and I soldiered on through this show. I want to thank you guys for a great 2024. I know a lot of you will have championship season this coming weekend. I wish you guys all the best unless you're playing me. Jerry will be back next week. We're going to start getting more into this rookie class. We're going to start getting more into a lot of these tips. This top 10 list that I just went through will be a lot of like individual show topics throughout the off season, because I think part of what makes the Dynasty Warzone special is that we're always trying to be a step ahead. I mentioned it several times through the show. We're always trying to be a step ahead. If you want to be a step ahead of being a step ahead, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. It's $5 a month. We're going to give new patrons orphans from our Dynasty Warzone patron leagues. I pay for the first year. It's part of becoming a new member at patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. We have an awesome group chat, one-on-one help, DMs, whatever you need. I think for $5 a month is about as good as a value as you can get, especially given that it depends on how many we have. You might get a free orphan. Maybe it's a good orphan. Maybe it's a bad orphan. Don't know. But that's over at patreon.com/Dynasty Warzone. Going to remind you of Dynasty Deluxe. Going to remind you of the all-in package for the rest of 2024 season. Should go through the playoffs. I don't know. But for $25, if you got it for a week, who cares? Sit there and start blasting through the Dynasty section, get stocked up, and then check out FastDraft. Shout out to my girl, Brittany. Brittany does all of our thumbnails over at YouTube. She does a tremendous job with the art. And a couple of weeks ago, she took down first place in the FastDraft Frenzy 6. She kicked a lot of ass. And you guys will continue to kick a lot of ass. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever the blue hell you and your... I don't care if you celebrate none of them. You're probably not working, or you're probably with friends and family. Enjoy that. I'll be back with my friend and /family Jerry next week for more Dynasty nonsense. But until then, guys, hope you guys have a good holiday. I'll talk to you next week. See y'all.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.